If you think about the three main pigments that are available in the natural world, you'll probably think of melanin because you and I produce melanin. But there are other animals that also, or plants that also produce things and include things like anthocyanins, things like carotenoids. But in the context of insects, insects do not actually have the ability to produce any hues of blue, nor do they actually have any ability to produce the warm pigments like carotenoids. They can produce the warm, the oranges, the yellows, the reds. I'll talk to you about that in just a second. But anthocyanins in particular is not something an insect can produce, and so they either sequester it from their diet, or, as you probably have already learned, they leverage structural color to bend the property, bend light and leverage those properties of lights to reflect some really, really cool colors. But in the context of melanin, that certainly is a very, very significant pigment for insects. You've learned already in some examples like this honeypot ant, the need for the replete ants to be able to expand and swell their abdomen in order to hold some of that honey. And it becomes then very, very clear that there are regions that are sclerotized and unsclerotized. And of course, the darker regions have a higher melanin content. Now, what are the pigments that insects actually make? Now, melanin we just described a while ago, which produces your darker colors like your blacks and grays, and then they appear in some cases brown. They're made by a particular cell type, right? It's a specialized cell type. They're called melanocytes. They produce melanin. But there are a whole range of other pigments that insects make in some shape and form. And some are still being studied how they're even made. Now, from the list that you can see here, before I go through each of them in a little bit of detail, these ones all collectively produce some of the warm colors, like your reds and like your oranges and like your yellows. They include things like omochromes, they can also, omochromes can produce a little bit of brown as well. They're produced and then deposited in the eyes of the insects because they function as visual screening pigments, right? And they help control the light that fluxes into the photoreceptors. When we get to vision in a later module in a lot more detail, you'll see again how pigments come in and also allow the insect to see. Now, then you've got these pteridines. Now, the word terry in the front there probably gives away where some of these pigments are deposited. So not only are they in the eyes, you'll also find them in the wings. And these ones include, again, the reds, the oranges, the yellows, but in some cases is also responsible for really, really luminous type colors. And it's believed that pteridines, in addition to being pigment molecules, are actually cofactors as well in some essential metabolic reactions. So this one is just an area of study that I myself am not very familiar in, and is only just we're only just starting to grasp at the surface. Now, some of the other ones like papiliochromes. Now, this one is so obvious which order of insects they came from. Papilio, definitely a butterfly. So the lepidopterans make papiliochromes, and this one here, I don't want you to worry so much about the detail as much as that they've been characterized molecularly, and so they're structurally unique. And so they've basically got their own group name. Now, then in the hemipterans, particularly your scale insects or your co cocoidea, that one's always a mouthful for me. And of course, your aphids, your aphidodea, and they produce another unique group that also produces the reds, the oranges, the yellows. But in the case of aphids, they can also produce blue-green. So these are some examples of pigments that insects make. Any other color that you see in an insect, it actually does not make. So either it sequesters through the food that it eats, or it leverages structural properties of the cuticle in order for you to perceive that color.